Hello there, Evan Nathaniel Grimm. Thank you for joining my January 2023 forecast. I'm going to go through the impact of January on all 12 signs. And also briefly at the beginning, I'm going to talk about the energy of 2023. And we do have a lot of changes coming. So really late 2020, all of 2021, and all of 2022, and even going back to late 2017, we had Saturn in its ruling signs of Capricorn and Aquarius. And that is really, that whole era is coming to an end, or at least it's shifting. We're going to get Saturn in Pisces. We're also going to get Pluto switching into Aquarius. We're going to get Mars finally leaving that 7-month transit in Gemini. The nodes are shifting. Jupiter is going to Taurus. So there's a lot of changes in 2023. I have chapters set here, by the way. So if you need to skip to your sign, we're going to go all in today. So before I begin, if you want a reading from me, check the link below as well on my website. I do birth chart readings, transit readings, relationship readings, and solar return readings. Also, if you want to get a full deep dive into 2023 for your sign, check out my 2023 forecast on my website. And also, I'm hosting an astrology retreat in Croatia next year. It's going to be very exciting. We'll do some sightseeing and just exploring the coast of Croatia. Also, I will host custom astrology workshops. There are still spots open, so please check those out and feel free to reach out with any questions. So let me share my screen here so that you can see what's going on. So really what I'm going to do today, again, is going to walk you through January of 2023. Now, I'm going to do that in a couple of ways. So number one, I'm going to track the lunar cycles that happen in January this month, because the lunar cycles really do activate the themes for you that you will actually be able to see and experience and feel. So, but again, like I said, 2023, what are the highlights? Number one, we do have a number of planetary shifts. So we do have Saturn, again, leaving its sort of 5+ year stretch in its ruling signs of Capricorn and Aquarius. Now, from late 2017 until basically March of 2023, you are really feeling the Saturn energy, that heaviness, that pressure, that resistance. Saturn is resistance. So where are you experiencing resistance in your life? That's where you want to check. Where is Capricorn and Aquarius in my chart? So if you have Capricorn on the descendant or in the 7th house, and Aquarius in the 8th, then a lot of your resistance has happened in relationships and in confronting your fears and your shadow sides and whatnot in the 8th house, and so on and so forth. But now in 2023, we're facing a new era where Saturn is kind of in Pisces, helping us clear certain foundations and also focus on where am I maybe falling short in my purpose. Now, Pluto will shift into Aquarius from Capricorn, where it's been since 2008. We all know about the Great Recession. That was the ushering in of that Pluto and Capricorn energy, which is about building up hierarchies, consolidating power. And now in Aquarius, we're going to see more of a dispersion of power, hopefully, within amongst the people. But that does not mean it will be easy per se, because we are in the beginning still the Pluto-Saturn cycle in Capricorn that kicked off at the beginning of 2020. Which means we have a 35-ish year cycle of, how power is still being wielded from the top. But anyways, Pluto and Aquarius will empower the collective, and it will put pressure on the fixed signs, especially to transform a certain area of their lives. And we also have Jupiter going into Taurus, which eventually in May, which will actually help the fixed signs as well. So the fixed signs are going to get a boost, I think, from Jupiter next year in 2023. But the cardinal signs will also enjoy Jupiter finishing its path through Aries in the first 5 months of the year. We also have the nodes shifting into Aries and Libra. So the focus will be for Aries on growth, accumulating positive karma. For Libra, kind of awaiting a little bit of karma based on past actions. There will be somewhat of a dialing down of the energy for some Libras, where Libras are focused on purging and releasing energy a little bit more than moving forward. So it's almost like Libras are going to be thinking halfway through next year about what do I need to let go of in order to move forward. So anyways, we're going to cover specifically January for now, but obviously stick with me and subscribe to my content if you want to keep getting these month by month breakdowns. So So in January, I'm setting this chart to January 16th, just so that we have a visual of like what's generally going on in the middle of the month, but we can obviously talk about the entire month as well. So we're going to start off with Aries. So what is happening for Aries, sun, moon, and rising? I'm prioritizing the rising sign, but if you were to create a derivative chart for the Aries sun or moon, you would still see these house aspects. So anyways, for Aries, what is going on for Aries in January? So we're starting off, by the way, with a Mercury retrograde in January. So Mercury will start to retrograde, will station retrograde on December 29th. So as we enter January, you are looking back at your commitments and revisiting them because it will be in Capricorn. And we are really beginning with a Cancer full moon, January 6th, which is really the follow-up from the Capricorn new moon on December 23rd. And I really like that Capricorn new moon. It's sort of this really broad swath of cardinal energy, which is good for initiation, executive action. And it's really being fueled by our self-confidence that we kind of have back with Jupiter and Aries. We have faith in ourselves again. And what's going on with this Cancer full moon? So I don't have it here in this picture, but you can kind of, reverse the clock a little bit here to imagine what this looks like. But really what we're going to see is a Cancer full moon January 6th at 16 degrees of Cancer. So for Aries, that is going to impact your fourth house of the home and the family, and also the inner world. So what's interesting about that full moon is it will create a T-square with really with Chiron to that sun and moon. So the sun and moon are naturally opposite on a full moon, but also squaring Chiron in your first house. And I'm assuming a whole sign system for this forecast, but some of you may have Chiron in your 12th house. As you can see in this version, if you were like a 16-degree Aries in Los Angeles, you would have Chiron slightly in the 12th, but anyways, most of you will have Chiron in the first here. T-squaring this full moon in Cancer. So what exactly is the T-square all about there? Well, the sun at that time period is in your 10th house. So you're highlighting and focusing on it's solarizing, literally, it's solarizing your career aspirations. So Aries risings, there is a bit of a contrast here between, okay, maybe we set intentions in December on this is a new career trajectory, but now the full moon in Cancer is highlighting what do I need to nurture in my home and my family? Where am I off balance between my work life and my home life? And off of that, Chiron is sitting right in the middle in that T-square at that midpoint in your first house to say, have I thrown my career or my home life out of balance? Am I not nurturing myself? And how is that showing up in my even my sense of identity and my sense of self? Because when you have Chiron in the first, it's not the easiest transit because it almost feels like your vulnerabilities are really connected to who you are right now and your identity, and it's hard to avoid them. So really it's a confrontation with your vulnerabilities as it pertains to your career or your relationship to your parents, even because the midheaven and the IC can be intimately connected with your parents. So who raised you and who did you look up to? What were the authority figures in your life? So I think for Aries, the beginning of January, you're facing some type of clash with an authority figure that recalls maybe some difficult moments with a parent. But of course, with Chiron, there's always healing opportunities. So it's not that that argument or that confrontation has no breakthrough. I think there is a breakthrough that helps you come to terms with what remains, right, in my healing journey. Now, Mercury will be retrograde on that full moon conjunct the sun, actually. But, Mercury is retrograding up in your 10th house and in a post-shadow phase as well after that. So for much of January, Aries, you want to be very careful with how you communicate with authority figures, and really just kind of and parents, but also just like really make sure that you say things twice and are really clear and thoughtful in working with executives or business owners, and even just how you communicate in your public life, like that could even be impacted by this. So public communications, just want to be mindful of that. And Mars is retrograde still in your third house in that full moon. So you can see here, it will be direct by mid-January, but on the Cancer full moon, Mars continues to retrograde in your third, maybe for some of you, your second house, but generally that just means you're continuing to rethink how you communicate or even what monetization strategies you have at play. Jupiter will be back in Aries, though, at the first degree in your first house for most of you, for some your 12th. So if it's in your 12th house, just think about that as continual spiritual epiphanies. If it's in your first, this is an uptick in self-confidence, which should mitigate some of the Chiron factors I'm talking about. And it may even just be the way in which you're seeing a perspective, getting a perspective on your healing journey that you didn't have before. Uranus is still retrograde on the Cancer full moon, but trining the sun and Mercury. So this is out of the box thinking kind of stuff. Neptune will be direct, of course, and trining the moon, which is actually nice also to speak to that healing energy. So I do see maybe for you in early January, it's a positive healing moment, but again, with an authority figure or a parent. And then Venus is in Aquarius at that point in your 11th house. So, and you're really close to Saturn. So theoretically, you're starting to feel like you are able to make like really good connections with organizations, communities, friend groups, or maybe even, I think your professional connections could come to you, but that's kind of something I want to reserve for the next lunar cycle in January. So January 21st, we have an Aquarius new moon, and the feature, which you can already see culminating on the 16th, is a Venus-Saturn conjunction. So the Venus-Saturn conjunction, in my opinion, it can be a very good thing. It can also be somewhat of a challenge for people. It depends on your entire birth chart, but if you have, Venus in a fixed sign, then this might be a little bit of a test of your relationship. So kind of like, do you really want that relationship? But I think many people with the Saturn-Venus conjunction, they may be on the new moon, because the new moon is about intentions and beginnings. They may be starting a relationship that is very sustainable, long-term, quality over quantity. And if for Aries, in your 11th house, it is very much about, to me, it's about professional connections. It doesn't mean that you can't have a romantic play on that, where it's like maybe there is something that comes out of that. Maybe you meet your future partner in a friend group. But I think for Aries, this has a very social media kind of flavor to it, or like a LinkedIn kind of vibe. So maybe you're just, again, forging a really powerful connection with somebody on the internet or in a community that maybe opens a door for you monetarily in the future. So that Aquarius new moon will really be, highlighting your 10th or 11th houses. So the career and the networks are the focus for you at that time in late January. So set intentions in that domain. And then Mercury and Mars are finally direct again. So you won't see it in this Jan 16, but by Jan 21, Mercury is direct again. So you're able to move forward a little bit more easily in your career, your career projects and agreements. And also with Mars direct, whether it's in your second or your third, you're either able to get a lot of energy in knowing how to chase your financial goals, or really push ahead with your communications projects. So I think that honestly, the Cancer full moon could be a little bit of like a breakthrough in your healing journey and how that connects to your identity in the beginning of the month. But then the Aquarius new moon, it looks like you're really moving forward with maybe something that's a little bit more socially focused, professionally focused, and it's less personal. It's because a lot of these planets are up in the sort of the career and the upper half of the chart. But I think that ultimately, that is allowing you to maybe even work. So it's almost like maybe there's a healing moment for you personally that allows you to navigate your professional life much more effectively. So let's talk about Taurus. So what's going on with Taurus rising? So in January, the Cancer full moon, January 6th, is at 16 degrees of Cancer. So for many of you, that's highlighting your third house of communications. So how do you feel protected, nurtured, and the third house is about communication. So maybe this for you as a Taurus, that Capricorn new moon was in the 9th house. So that's a little bit more about philosophy, travel, those larger patterns of perspective. And now the Cancer full moon is in your third. So maybe you are manifesting something of a conversation that's really important to you. That's a little bit more emotionally charged and, allows you to connect with someone on a deeper level. But also it could just be, you're manifesting a communications project in which, or even you're learning, the full moon is illuminating what you want to learn more about on a day-to-day basis. So what subject do I need to master? Now, this is all going to be squaring Chiron in your 12th house. Now, Chiron in the 12th is very hidden. It means that our vulnerabilities in our healing journey is either really only being conjured in dreams or in our spiritual life, or even in some type of a creative realm. So I do wonder for Taurus risings and Tauruses generally, if this Cancer full moon Jan 6 is speaking to maybe there is a awareness of like where you may be lacking in spiritual knowledge, or maybe where your perspective is limited by a lack of again, like a spiritual perspective. So maybe there is something about sacred geometry or Reiki or astrology that is healing for you, but also gives you something that you want to know more about in the third. So you're igniting maybe this insatiable curiosity for something that's connected to a healing journey. So how can I heal myself in different ways? Like maybe some Tauruses are stuck on, why am I not why am I not getting through to that next layer? Why can't I break through this wall in my life? And it doesn't have to be just related to education. It could be something else in your life. It could be a relationship. But now Chiron's T-squaring this, that eventual Cancer full moon. It's like maybe I'm looking to the wrong people for help. Maybe I'm looking to the wrong things for purpose. Maybe I'm opening my mind to something new, which for a fixed sign, can be a big deal. So Mercury will be retrograde on that Cancer full moon conjunct the sun in your 9th house. So I do think at the beginning of January, Tauruses may have some travel hoops to get through, but it's not the end of the world. Mercury retrogrades 3 times a year, essentially. So you don't really have to, don't like worry about this too much. You just want to build in extra time, essentially, for your travels. Mars will be retrograde for most of you in your 2nd house. So you're rethinking maybe some of your money goals or how you want to make money or even what you value. And then Jupiter will be in Aries again in this time in your 12th house. So Jupiter in your 12th is expanding your spiritual perspective, maybe, or maybe your dreams are very prophetic and profound and forward looking, or maybe spirits are entering your life to protect you and to show that you're protected. I don't know. Maybe some Tauruses are connecting with their guides at this time. But I do think Jupiter adds a positive spin to the Chiron T-square of expanding how for you as a Taurus, spirituality is something where maybe your knowledge could be better in or deeper, and how it could be used. You could apply it to your, that spiritual wisdom could be applied to a way in which you feel more complete and whole. And Uranus still retrograde. So, and by the way, for everybody, I'll say this at the end too. Once Uranus goes direct at the end of January, like we have all the planets are finally direct. So we do have, this sort of forward momentum happening. So let's go into the Aquarius new moon. What does that mean for Tauruses? So the Aquarius new moon for many of you will be in the 10th house, actually, of the career, and Saturn and Venus will be conjunct on that Aquarius new moon. So in the 10th house, that has a very professional connotation. So for Taurus risings, it may be that you are embarking on some type of, new career track through some type of financial agreement, or you're building a relationship that's really solid with someone who you work for or work with. That will be like very positive for you. So I really do think, I think that Aquarius new moon is positive because Saturn is really well placed in Aquarius and in the 10th house. And so it's like, you've had Saturn in your 10th house for for a long time, for 2 years, 2+ years now. And, you kind of understand like where you need to, what kind of commitments professionally you want to make. And so with Venus there, it's like, maybe you're finally making it happen. You're manifesting the money, you're manifesting the income, you're manifesting the professional connection that eventually leads you to the job that you want. And for some Tauruses, it will be in the 11th house of social groups, social groups, communities, organizations. But even in that context, I do see this as a professional connection, or maybe a really solid friendship that is forming. So at this point, Mercury and Mars are direct and in conjunct actually around that time. Mars in the second will allow you to, it kind of dovetails with this. So it's maybe I'm pushing forward in my money goals. And Mercury direct in the ninth, I'm more easily able to communicate and see what my worldview is and like, what are my aspirations in a lot of ways. So generally, I think that Tauruses are in the beginning of January on a bit of a spiritual kick, and in looking into how can I, again, apply spirituality to my healing journey. But in the second half of the month, the focus is a little bit more logical on like sort of this boots on the ground approach of like, how can I actually manifest my career? And it may or may not connect with Chiron. It may or may not connect with that full moon in Cancer. Maybe it's just a shift in focus towards things that are really concrete for you. Because I know Taurus, you need solid things in your life. It can't all be abstractions. So I think the January Cancer full moon will be a little bit more of like a surprise. And the Aquarius new moon will fit in a little bit more to your style. So let's shift into Gemini. So now we have Gemini. In Geminis, you have the Cancer full moon Jan 6. That's going to be activating your 8th house, 2nd house, and 11th house. So, the Cancer full moon is a culmination and really a manifestation, and for some people, a release. So something's hitting a peak. Now you're ready to shed it. So the Capricorn new moon, December 23rd, that may be in that 8th house, that could have been a financial commitment. That could have been a commitment to even looking into your shadow side or doing shadow work or thinking about even business affairs, how you're managing your business if you're an entrepreneur, maybe even just like committing to like tax filings, things like that in the 8th. But with the Cancer full moon in the 2nd, you are realizing something in you're bringing something to fruition out of what you value. So in the 2nd house, you don't have to necessarily value money, but in the 2nd house, it could be like, I want to make more, or I want to change how I'm even using my natural talents. Because the 2nd house is not just about money. It's like, how do you value yourself? So Cancer full moon in the 2nd, it's like, what am I worth? What am I worth? Am I worth a paycheck? And I want more of that? Am I worth more time? Is my time valuable? Am I sick of people showing up late for lunches with me? Like, do I have to set a boundary on that? Or do I value something else more than I thought? Like, is it less about the money? Realizing that maybe I don't want the job, even though it comes with a lot of money, I'd rather take something else. Now, this is all squaring Chiron, though, in the 11th. And Chiron in the 11th, that pertains to bringing out maybe some insecurities just coming up in social situations and friend groups and in communities that you belong to. And for some of you, maybe this is more about entering communities that have a focus on healing, which can be good. But T-squaring that sun and moon, it could be that a friend or some connection you have is challenging your value systems or making you feel like your self-worth is not so high right now, or making you realize that you need to nurture yourself or to nurture your natural talents, by the way. So if you haven't been playing guitar in a long time, if that was a thing you're talented at, then maybe you want to do that right now. Mercury will be retrograde in the 8th house at that time on that Cancer full moon, Jan 6. And that's, you are rethinking maybe some of your financial commitments, or even thinking about triggers in your life and traumas that may have been brought out recently, and why they keep coming up. So why does this situation bother me, or this person bother me? How can I rethink, why is that coming up? So it could be a very psychoanalytic kind of transit. Jupiter's back in Aries in your 11th. So there is this actually positive growth in your participation in communities. And so that could be a mitigating factor for the Chiron T-square. It's like, yeah, maybe there's a bit of a difficulty with a friend or in a community, but Jupiter's swooping in to say, there is more opportunities here to connect with people, to broaden your participation in networks. And to even get more perspective, because Jupiter's perspective, maybe I can get more perspective from people in my life, the people in my surroundings. You know, Neptune will be direct, trining that moon. So, you know, it could be positively healing in that way and forgiving even. Maybe there's a moment of forgiveness. And Venus will be in Aquarius in your 9th house. But I want to jump to the Aquarius new moon. So the Aquarius new moon is January 21st, and that's at 1 degree of Aquarius. So for many of you, that will activate your 9th house. And sorry, I forgot to mention Mars is retrograde in early January still. And in your 1st house, for most of you, that's, you know, strategizing, how do I push my energy forward in a way that doesn't turn people off? Now, at this time in the Aquarius new moon, Mars is direct. So Mars is direct, and Mercury is direct as well at that point. So Jan 21, there's a Saturn-Venus conjunction in Aquarius at 23 degrees of Aquarius. So, you know, that in your 9th house, yeah, I mean, I feel like in the 9th, there could go a number of directions. So a Saturn-Venus conjunction is usually, in my opinion, about, you know, if it was a transiting Saturn hitting a Venus placement, a natal Venus, like that would be potentially the loss of a relationship or the birth of a long-term relationship, like that has engagement potential behind it. So that in the 9th, I mean, I'll just give a few examples because I think that it could go a few directions. So it could be that you're meeting a very serious partner on a trip in the 9th. Or maybe you are committing to a teaching opportunity in the 9th, because Venus can also be about our self-worth, which of course was connected to that Cancer full moon. So maybe you're committing to a new job in the educational field that comes with money, or there's an agreement with somebody that you strike about, oh, we see eye to eye on this thing. We actually like, so maybe you and your partner are in a bitter debate about you have a different position on a certain wedge issue. And maybe you're able to come to an agreement about or compromise and say, you know, I actually, you know, I feel like we can see eye to eye on this issue. So, you know, for others, I think that maybe it's just like a new perspective on, you know, financially where you want to be, setting financial goals. Because even the 9th, you know, it can be very much about our philosophy in life. So does it matter to you if you make $1 million or does it not? So, I mean, I think that for most people, it's probably some type of relationship energy, but even in the 9th, that new relationship could be with someone who kind of agrees with you. Maybe it's that you're leaving a partner and you're finding someone else who agrees or sees the world the way you do a little bit more. So if you're in a conflict, if you're a Gemini and you're in a conflict right now with somebody and a partner over like, you know, what are your values and even just like senses of justice and rightness and correctness, you may be swapping that partner with somebody else or solidifying that relationship by compromising. And then Mars will be direct in your 1st, which means you're able to communicate your needs a little bit more easily. You're going to be able to set boundaries more easily. So I like that for you. You're able to face these confrontations as they come up. And Mercury's direct now in the 8th, which means, you know, you might have that better perspective now on money. How do I organize my financial life and so on and so forth. So let's go into Cancer. Cancers. So you have the Cancer full moon, of course, in your 1st house. So Cancers on Jan 6, you had the Capricorn new moon in the 7th, which really means that you had initiated some type of new, maybe not new relationship, but you're really doubling down on your commitments. But the Cancer full moon in the 1st at 16 degrees of Cancer, it's almost like your emotions are really, really or resurfacing in a way that is unexpected. So the full moon in the 1st is always a time of like, sometimes emotional sensitivity, especially for Cancers, but it's almost like overwhelming. There's a deluge of emotions that come in that make you realize, you know, something about yourself that you'd hidden from other people that you can't hide anymore because the emotions behind it are so strong. So I think for a lot of Cancers, the beginning of January, it's almost like an illumination of what part of myself do I kind of like need to release and let go of, and especially in contrast with that Chiron on the 10th. So maybe you're realizing how your emotional triggers are tied to issues with your parents, Chiron on the 10th, or with your work. How is work stressing you? How did your parents stress you when you were a child? all of these questions like could be intimately connected to your difficulty right now in a relationship. So how am I being held back by, I thought I disconnected from a parent that I wasn't getting along with, but they're still infringing on the quality of my life. So there could be something like that comes up or comes to a head. But with Chiron in the 10th, maybe be a realization that I need to, with Cancer, nurture myself through a healing profession. So for Chiron in the 10th, some Cancers right now are thinking about switching a career into something that's more, in the healing arts. So in that way, it could be positive, actually. But I do see this as probably a confrontation in your relationships, significant relationships, that pertains to like an unhealed wound or an insecurity being brought out, or maybe an outright rejection, honestly. Now Jupiter will, Mercury is retrograde in your 7th house. So yeah, maybe there's some difficulty in communicating with a partner. And then Neptune is direct at that point, Neptune's been direct for a while. Uranus is retrograde. So, we're not totally able to capture our out of the box thinking, but I think that with that trine, with Uranus trining the Sun and Mercury, maybe we're able to capture it a little bit. But I want to also highlight the fact that Mars is retrograde in that time period in your 12th house. So what that means is hidden enemies coming to light. Maybe you're still struggling with people a lot. Maybe your sleep cycle is still a little bit off. And maybe, you just want to be very careful about how you use your energy and who you get into a conflict with. Because when Mars is in the 12th, it's like some of the people who provoke you are hidden enemies that could cause you to unravel. So you just have to be, again, really conscious of how you're using this emotional energy that is going to swell up in the beginning of January. I would focus it more on like, what do I need to fix within myself? How I don't want to rely on other people to fix me anymore. And how can I navigate my more painful past experiences through my relationships right now, but also heal maybe a wound with a parent up in the 10th, or maybe there's a challenging moment with an authority figure that makes you reflect on, why do I have trouble with authorities? Maybe I don't trust some authorities because of my parental dynamics growing up. Then, but I do want to shift into the Aquarius new moon on January 21. That will feature a Saturn-Venus conjunction for many of you in your 8th house. So that could be the birth of a financial agreements, investments. Maybe someone is investing in your business. If you're a business owner, maybe you're starting a business. Maybe there is a business partnership that arises. For others, it could be a relationship that just has like this really deep psychological component to it, where it's like somebody is helping you see a part of yourself that you've hidden from. And maybe that is connected to that relationship that you're fighting about in the beginning of January. Maybe it's a new relationship, honestly. Now Mars and Mercury will be direct at that time again. So Mars direct in the 12th. I mean, by that point, you probably had so many conversations with spirits over the last 7 months or 6 months or whatever, 5 months. You probably encountered so many different random enemies that Mars direct, it's like, okay, now I feel like I have a stronger connection to my spiritual life. Maybe I'm able to channel all of a sudden. Maybe I have this inner psychic in me. Maybe, I'm more thoughtful about how I project my aggression or how I project my desires. So I'm not attracting toxic situations anymore. And that's something to keep in mind for Cancers. Mars in the 12th in Gemini, it's really hard to avoid confrontation, because Mars in the 12th in Gemini, it's just your tone. You got to kind of check your tone. Your tone is a little aggressive when Mars is in the 12th. It's like, and you don't know why. It's just in the 12th that you're unconsciously projecting that. So otherwise, I do think that Saturn-Venus conjunction could be really positive for you financially, though. So I think that like maybe you're finding someone who's willing to buy in to your business and invest in you, or you're investing in something yourself, like a stock or a trust or something like that. So I want to shift to Leo. So now you have the Cancer full moon on Jan 6. The Cancer full moon is in your 12th house. So the Cancer full moon is in your 12th house of, yes, hidden enemies, but also spirituality, your sense of oneness, your sense of, connection with the divine, with source, with the creative muse, solidarity with the collective, your sense of service. And so for Leos, the full moon in the 12th is making you realize where am I in my spiritual journey? Is there some type of a realm that I need to transcend into that I've been ignoring for all these years or my entire life? I mean, the Cancer full moon happens every year, right? But I do think that this is an important time for you to recognize, number one, because for Leos, a lot of you have been focusing on your career and switching that up over the last few years. But now it's like with the Cancer full moon in the 12th, it's a really good reminder for you of like, how is my mental health? How is my spiritual health? Do I feel like I have a purpose? Do I feel connected to the divine or something? Or is there a creative root that I need to tap into? And the Capricorn new moon was in your 6th. So maybe you're focused on the balancing act between day-to-day work in the trenches, the methodical stuff you're working on, but how does that, it's an illumination here in the 12th of like, is there a dream that I've been ignoring? And I think your dream could be very vivid around that time, January 6th, with that Cancer full moon, because it's like, the full moon in the 12th, it can be like very profound and very vivid. And maybe sleep will be difficult generally, but I think your dreams may have divine messages for you at that time. But what makes this full moon special is it's T-squaring Chiron and Aries. So Chiron and Aries in the 9th, the 9th house, that kind of pertains to a worldview and a perspective. And it's a very much a learning and a teaching moment. So I think between the connection of your 9th, your 6th, your 12th house, it's kind of like there is a big learning moment here of like, well, I'm now seeing how what I'm working on day to day in the 6th house with Capricorn, how does that connect to my purpose in the 12th that it really feeds into the collective? At the same time, that how does this all connect? And with the 9th house Chiron perspective, is what I'm working on day to day, like, again, purpose driven, connected to my spirituality. And with all that said, like, is any of this getting me closer to self-acceptance and self-love? I actually think that that's your Cancer full moon. And Mercury will be retrograde in your 6th. So at this time, maybe communication is a little bit difficult with certain coworkers or on work projects. So you might feel a little flustered and maybe wanting to escape into that spiritual zone. Mars will continue to be retrograde in your 11th house of social media and groups and networks. So you're continuing to rethink how you communicate to groups, how you communicate online, not chasing every battle, not pursuing every debate. But then the Aquarius new moon, January 21, is activating your 7th house. I think this is a way bigger deal, to be honest, because anytime we have the 6th house, the 12th house activated, these are the cadent houses, and as it pertains to the ascendant, it doesn't always have a clear connection to like our outward projection of ourself into the world, but when we get into the 7th house, I mean, that's like front and center. These are your relationships, right? These are your relationships. And so the 7th house, it's significant because you've had Saturn in your 7th house for 2 years now. And so you face resistance in your relationships. So for Leo risings, it's like the Saturn-Venus conjunction on the Aquarius new moon. This is the birth, maybe, of a new relationship. And with Saturn and Venus, we're talking about quality over quantity. We're talking about long-term. We're talking about potential marriage eventually or engagement. This is a very serious agreement. And it doesn't just have to be romantic. It could be platonic or business related, professional. So for Leos and Leo risings, the Aquarius new moon in late January, January 21, I think you're forming a really strong connection with somebody, or you're ending the relationship finally. If you didn't end it last August, then you're probably ending it here. Because I know that some of the Leos are a fixed sign, so sometimes they hold on to things too long. So I think that I know from like the people who have reached out to me after my videos in August 2022, tons of Leo risings broke up in August 2022. And so I'm not going to lie, some of you maybe are just holding out, and it's going to happen in late January, but it doesn't have to, right? This could even be an engagement. So for some Leos, maybe you're already in a relationship and you're like, Evan, I'm doing well. And I think that it's really important for astrologers to, of course, add in all the caveats. And so this is obviously a great platform for me to have more of like a long-term, like a long form dialogue about this. So to really get into that, right? Like there's multiple scenarios. And so for many of you, you could just be like, all right, this is the person I want to be with. And now the ring is presented and we're solid. So I do think this is a huge moment. This could even just be a marriage for some of you. And Mercury Mars are direct. And again, sorry, just to backtrack. Again, it doesn't have to be romantic. It could be meeting somebody who's willing to invest in your business. Jupiter's in the 9th, by the way, throughout the month and through May. In the 9th, good for traveling and good for really expanding your knowledge, your higher knowledge in something. Mercury Mars will be direct at this point in late January. So Mars direct in the 11th. It's a little bit better. You're a little bit more mindful of which battles am I picking on social media, or, am I going to the right, events? Am I wasting my time at certain things? You're more efficient again with that retrograde to reflect. And then Mercury direct in the 6th, more methodical and more free flowing. It's a little bit smoother for you to navigate your career and your day-to-day. So let's move on to Virgo. So now we have Virgos. So Virgos, you have the, and sorry, let me just quickly check something here. I want to make sure I have the right, sorry, I have to navigate some of these screens. Okay. Okay, cool. So Virgos, what's going on for you in January? So January 6th, you have a Cancer full moon at 16 degrees of Cancer. Cancer here is really highlighting your 11th house. So the Cancer full moon is in your 11th house, and the 11th house is about your group participation, your social media networks, affiliations, and the Cancer full moon is coming off of the Capricorn new moon in the 5th. So the Capricorn new moon in the 5th was maybe a commitment to a new creative hobby, or you're doubling back onto you're looking back into a creative hobby. And now the full moon is in your 11th. So you're bringing to fruition here, maybe you're bringing your creative talents or your sense of joy into a group. Full moon in the 11th in Cancer. Maybe you're just kind of nurturing a friend group and fostering that in a new way. It will T-square, though, Chiron in the 8th house. And Chiron in the 8th house brings up a lot of psychological wounds. So once we add in the Chiron energy to the mix, it's like maybe there's a connection in a program or a group or an affiliation that allows you to heal something deeply traumatic from your past. But for some of you, it actually could be a very heated moment with a friend that brings out old triggers. You want to be very mindful in early January of like, who are you getting along with, and how are you, and for some of you, maybe you're projecting in a good way, you're explaining your healing journey on social media in the 11th. But I think for a lot of you, you want to think about, do I need to heal some type of bond with a certain friend here where we keep running to the same wall? And how does that speak to my own unfinished healing journey? Now, Mercury will be retrograde in the 5th. That's not the worst place. I think that's just like, again, rethinking some of your creative investments and hobbies and processes. Mars will be retrograde, though, still in your 10th. So I think that's a pretty big deal, because Mars retrograde in the 10th means you're highly motivated to energize your career, put a lot of energy into your profession. But when it's retrograde, it's like you're making some missteps there. Like maybe you're not, maybe you're overextending yourself in your career. And hopefully that Gemini full moon in December showed that to you. So ideally, you're actually you're working backward. You're like untethering yourself and offloading some projects at work and responsibilities. Because now Mars retrograde, you're thinking about, I kind of need boundaries here. I really need to like be aware of saying, I have to say no to certain projects. So you're kind of still doing that a little bit. And you really want to think about that, because Mars retrograde in the 10th, you can really drain yourself and exhaust yourself through your career. Jupiter will be back in Aries at this point in your 8th house. That usually bodes well for like your financial life. And, over the next 5 months, maybe there is some type of trust or investment that you're benefiting from, but it's not always guaranteed. It could just be an expansion of your awareness of your your subconscious, and what are your fears and triggers, and getting a better perspective on them. But let's jump into the Aquarius new moon, January 21st. It's highlighting your 6th house, and that's a Saturn-Venus conjunction in the 6th. So the Saturn-Venus conjunction in the 6th, the new moon is, of course, a new beginning. In the 6th, maybe you're beginning a new work project. But with Venus Saturn conjunction, I think you're forming an alliance, a very strategic and positive alliance with a coworker. Maybe you're cutting off contact with, maybe you're just no longer working with somebody on a project. But I think for many of you, yeah, it's really a partnership for you that there's a commitment here to, working a certain way in the 6th house, or working with somebody, and someone's got your back here. Maybe someone's looking out for you. Maybe someone's supporting you and giving you more of a solid structure in your day-to-day. Like maybe you have a new boss. Like maybe there's a new direct manager who comes in and says, this is the beginning of the year, so there's probably a lot of change-ups in your workplace. But I think there's something here that's helping you, someone here of a professional connection who's helping you balance out your work life in a new way. And I mean, maybe some of you are committing to a new health regimen that somehow ties into your Venus pursuits of living a more balanced life or something. Or, even with Saturn, Venus in the 6th, it could just be like a new money. It could have like a new project attached to it, like it has money attached to it. So just like you're working on something new that has a financial implication, and it could be positive. But it could be the end of a certain day-to-day responsibility as well. So Mars and Mercury will be direct at this time. And Mars direct in the 10th. I like that because now it's like, hopefully you've established your boundaries and you're ready to move forward in your career in a really structured way. And Mars is giving you positive motivation again. And you're like, I'm not going to make those mistakes again. So hopefully you've learned from your mistakes at that time. And it's like, you're really ready to have a huge impact in your career, and knowing when to shut out certain projects and when to pursue certain others in a way that allows you to advance and move up really quickly throughout the year. So I think that you've learned a lot about how to better navigate your career. So let's go into Libras. So Libras, you have the Cancer full moon, on Jan 6. It's really highlighting your 10th house. So the Cancer full moon for Libras, anytime you have a full moon in the 10th, this is really very much, it's activating your chart angles, right? So this is going to be very visible for you in your life. So the full moon in the 10th, this is a manifestation for some of you, maybe, of the career that you've wanted. So you're getting a responsibility that is really good for you. For some of you, maybe you're offloading a career. You're ready to just kind of like let it go. And for others, like there's a career transition. I'm not necessarily saying like about being let go, but I'm saying like maybe you realize, oh, this is not really nurturing me, this career. I need a different one. So maybe for you, it's a new career in that way. Others, it's an emotional moment with a parent or an authority figure you look up to. And with Cancer on the midheaven, like you're just realizing how maybe you haven't been nurturing your career enough. But it's T-squaring Chiron. Or Chiron is T-squaring the sun and moon on that Cancer full moon. So Chiron on the 7th, it may be that there are also, again, certain encounters with authority figures or parents up in the 10th and the 4th that leave you with a sense of vulnerability. Like, I need to really work on this aspect of my life. I need to work on how I relate to I have unhealed wounds with my parents. And maybe there are wounds here that come up that impact your relationships even. And you're realizing, this difficult moment with some kind of higher up or even in my career is reminding me of what I need to fix in myself or heal in myself. And how does that put a strain on my relationships? And there may even be a relationship here, someone you're in a relationship with, who's just adding strain to your life and saying, and just somehow bringing out these vulnerabilities that throw your career into a little bit of an imbalance, and bringing your emotional side into your career in a way that you didn't want or expect. So there could be an emotional exchange there, maybe a little bit of a heated exchange, but it can be healing with Jupiter entering Aries as well and getting back in your 7th house. So in January, you're starting to feel like there is actually a little bit more positive growth and good luck in your relationship. So maybe you're just cutting ties with someone here who doesn't make you feel special. Jupiter sweeping in to say, I'm going to introduce you to more and better people. Mars and Mercury will be retrograde at this time, and Mercury's retrograde in your 4th. So yeah, you're revisiting some of your family commitments maybe. And maybe your home is a source of difficulty. You're like constantly having to do little renovation projects and whatnot. But for many of you, it could be family related, and Mars is retrograding in your 9th. So that could be some difficulty with travel or something in your educational field. But I think in general, it's like the big highlight of that full moon is definitely the T-squared Chiron that I talked about. So let's go to the Aquarius new moon. How's that going to affect you? January 21st, there's an Aquarius new moon at 1 degree of Aquarius. Now, for many of you, it will be in the 5th house. But some of you will be a little bit more towards the 4th. But you know, the big news with the new moon, obviously the new moon is a new beginning, but with the Saturn-Venus conjunction, I think for most of you, that part of it is in your 5th house. The Saturn-Venus conjunction could be either the ending or the beginning of a long-term relationship. And in the 5th, I think that's more creative. So maybe you are, I mean, I know I'm talking about for Libras actually for many months now. It's about, you've been focusing with Saturn about manifesting a certain creative project. Well, now with Venus there, maybe you're making money off of it. Maybe someone's paying you, giving you like you're getting some type of like royalties or whatever on a creation. Maybe you're committing to a certain agreement that I will make these things in exchange, you know, for money, and it's like you're professionalizing your creative tasks. For others, maybe it's an agreement to just start a new creative hobby or whatnot. But I really think that there's a creative component to that 5th house. And even if you're a Libra who's not ultra creative, like still think about that. Like, where am I not feeding my creativity? Like everybody has a creative side. It was just that maybe it was shut out a little bit at some point. And then for some of you, this could even be the 5th house of romance and dating. This could be a date that you end up marrying them eventually. I mean, honestly, like that's a big deal because that conjunction is pretty tight. It's a 1 degree off. Venus will be at 23, I believe, or no, Saturn will be at 23. No, sorry. Venus will be at 23, Saturn will be at 24. I'm just looking at this other sheet here. So with that conjunction in the 5th, it doesn't happen overnight, but like maybe there's a date there that's just like really positive for you. So like a quality over quantity thing. Now, Mercury and Mars will be direct at that time. So now Mars in the 9th, you're ready to move forward and advance your studies, higher education, your travel. Mercury directs, family matters and home matters of the home are going more swimmingly. But I think, again, the highlight is really that Saturn-Venus conjunction. So now we get into Scorpios. What are Scorpios going through here in January? So you have a Cancer full moon. That's highlighting your 8th house. So the 8th house with Cancer full moon is following the Cancer, the 9th house. So Chiron is also involved in this, but you're really highlighting your 3rd, 9th, and 6th houses. So the Capricorn new moon was in your 3rd house, right? Your 3rd house of, you know, your studies, what you want to learn more about. You know, maybe it's just like a educational thing. It could even just be like your committing to a new communication project, or to, you know, maybe there was probably some kind of birth of that. But now with the full moon in the 9th, you're really it's going to be highlighting your 9th house of, you know, your higher education, maybe your travels and your perspectives in life. So for, you know, I almost think this is more of a philosophical thing, like a worldview. It could be like it's illuminating and highlighting, like, where is my perspective at right now? And like, am I aligned? Is my perspective aligned with like what I'm working on in my life and like who I'm dating or friends with? You're just getting a perspective on that. And for many of you, I mean, you could be manifesting some type of like travel related endeavor, maybe a retreat. I don't know. It's in a T-square with Chiron in the 6th though. So, you know, when Chiron's in a T-square to the sun and moon, it's like there is a bit of a moment of agitation. And with whom? Chiron's in the 6th. It could be with a coworker, but it could also be with Chiron in the 6th about how much more you need to heal your body, like physical stuff, like diet, exercise, routines, regimens. And you're looking to learn about these like different healing modalities. So how can I incorporate Reiki into my life or whatever? You know, or even learn more about spirituality in a way that's healing. But I think with Chiron in the 6th on that full moon, you have to be very mindful of like how you navigate your professional relationships. I mean, in the 6th, we're talking about coworkers a lot of times. And so there could be a clash of views, of worldviews, with the coworker on that Cancer full moon with the Chiron T-square. But Jupiter is now back in your 6th house. So Jupiter is allowing, and some of you it's in your 5th, but a lot of you it's in your 6th. Jupiter in the 6th is expanding some of your co-working relationships. It may be giving you a better perspective on your health or what you want to, what kind of projects you need to work on. So kind of a mixed bag there. But I think for many of you, it's either illuminating your healing journey, where your perspective is lacking, things like that. So Mercury will be retrograde and Mars will be retrograde as well. The Mars retrograde in the 8th is not easy. You're thinking about maybe some regrettable decisions you've made behind closed doors or in secret, or things that have been subversive, gossip. You're just thinking about maybe I shouldn't say certain things that are stirring the pot. And Mercury retrograde in the 3rd, everyday communication, yeah, maybe a little challenging, but it's not like there could be miscommunications, but Mercury retrograde is 3 times a year. I don't want to make too big of a deal out of that, but it will be retrograde. Jupiter, like I said, in Aries there in the 6th is helping you out. And then I want to shift to the Aquarius new moon, January 21. So for many of you, Aquarius is in the 4th house. And the new moon is a new beginning in the 4th. Maybe you're moving to a new home. Maybe you have a new relationship with a better relationship with your family, or you're focusing on family matters or matters of the home. But with the Saturn-Venus conjunction in the 4th, maybe you're investing in real estate. Maybe you're buying a home. Maybe you're signing a mortgage. Maybe you are committing to living with somebody. I think for a lot of you, you're committing to living with somebody or not living with somebody, right? Like that could be really interesting. But there could be like a really strong tie with a family member, or maybe even a family member is willing to fund something you're working on, like a business or a project. Mars and Mercury will be direct again. So now Mars in the 8th moving forward, it's like, okay, I'm ready to communicate more productively about my my deeper, darker emotions in a way that's not like undermining me. It's not like self defeating. Because a lot of the time, Mars in the 8th in Gemini, I just see that as a lot of gossip, honestly. And so now you're a little bit more aware of like, maybe what do I need to say? How can I connect deeply with someone in a way that doesn't erode trust in others, right? Or doesn't erode other people's trust in me. That could be really powerful. So now let's go into Sag. So Sagittarius, January looks for you. Well, you have a Cancer full moon. And the Cancer full moon for you is in the 8th house. So the 8th house is about really our merged joint resources, right? So things we share with others. And so a Cancer full moon, and it's also our deeper sort of psyche and fears. So Cancer full moon is a swelling up of emotions, right? A swelling up of emotions in that 8th house. So maybe you're having a very emotional moment with somebody that illuminates your, the deeper parts of your consciousness, and someone's like confronting you about it. But for others, I could see how this is more about like a illumination of like, where are my finances at? And in Cancer, maybe there's some real estate component there. Maybe it's like you're realizing, okay, like, this is what I need to do to sign that mortgage or whatever. But I think in general, the full moon in the 8th, it's either going to have a very profound transformational potential, but only after getting into that underbelly of your consciousness. So again, confronting fears, and the full moon maybe releasing fears, and maybe someone's helping you do that, because there's a Chiron T-square to this, and with the sun and moon opposition. And Chiron for many Sages is in the 5th, but for some it's even the 4th. But I think, if we were to use a whole sign system, it would be in the 5th. But anyway, so Chiron T-square the sun and moon, it is like someone is helping you. Maybe there's a moment of agitation with somebody, but either that or someone's helping you heal. And in the 5th house being about your inner child and your ability to bring out your inner joy, squaring the moon in the 8th, it's almost like maybe you're realizing, oh my God, like I've really, these fears have held me back from being happy or having joy or connecting with my inner child, or going out there and getting in front of the camera and creating things, right? So that could be really positive for you. I really think that is not all bad, but like really with the full moon in the 8th, you have to sit with your intensity and process it and think about, again, I feel real. I got a download about this. I feel really good about this. I think all Sag is here. January 6th, full moon in the 8th. Really need to think about, how am I, have I given myself full permission to be happy, right? Have I given myself full permission to be happy? Because if you're shutting out happiness, I think it's self-imposed here, and you're realizing how it is self-imposed, because it's like you're waiting for other people to fix you, or you're waiting for other people to confront your fears for you. You got to stop doing that, right? And basically realize, okay, I'm really sitting on this mountain of challenging moments or memories. I just got to face them. And in the wake of that, I think there is something really healthy here, where it's like, I'm more expressive now in the 5th with Chiron in the 5th. I'm able to feel like I have the natural talents of the 2nd house with Capricorn to go out there and show people my talents. So I like that. So it's creatively maybe healing. And you know, for some, again, it could just be financial, maybe realizing I'm behind on my taxes, whatever, something like that. Jupiter will be in Aries again, so highlighting your 4th, maybe your 5th house of either home. So maybe some Sagittarius are moving, but generally speaking, it'll be in your 5th, which is expanding your creativity, your confidence that you deserve to express yourself, which you do. Now let's jump into the Aquarius new moon, January 21. That Aquarius new moon is really in your 3rd house, of communication. So this is the birth of a new learning journey, new communication project, new course of study. Maybe there's just a big conversation you're having here. But the Saturn-Venus conjunction in the 3rd, you're talking about a new relationship, maybe with somebody. You're talking about committing and defining the relationship. Saturn-Venus conjunction, that's about defining the relationship. So you're talking about making that happen. And in the 3rd house, maybe you're monetizing a communication project, marketing, maybe you're publishing something that makes you money, agreeing to like a book deal. It could happen. Otherwise, I think that, you know, maybe you're just building relationships in your immediate environment. Even maybe you're forming a really strong relationship or friendship with your neighbors, or maybe you're reconnecting with siblings. But yeah, I think that's a pretty strong spots to have it. And by the way, something I didn't mention, in general, throughout the month, you have Mars retrograde in the 7th house for up until mid-January. That means you're revisiting some of the debates you've had with your significant partners, but now it's direct finally by the new moon. So you're ready to move forward productively and put your energy into relationships and partnerships, but in a way that's not disputatious or argumentative. And by the way, for everyone, I'll say this again at the end, but Uranus will move direct in January around the 22nd or 23rd. So by the end of January, all the planets are direct. So it's like, you know, for all of us, we're going to feel like forward momentum there. So let's go into Capricorn. So Capricorn, what is going on for you? So Cap risings, you have a Cancer full moon, January 6th. And the full moon is that illumination, culmination, manifestation, and sometimes release. And the full moon in the 7th house, it's activating your 7th, 4th, and 1st. So you have the Capricorn new moon December 23rd, which is kind of like maybe a new journey for you in self-development, maybe even like a new you, a new identity that you're announcing to people. And the full moon in the 7th is like, really, how nurturing are my relationships right now? I think there's an emotional moment of either feeling very comforted and protected in a relationship, or feeling very emotional in a relationship, like your emotional needs are not being met. Now, Chiron is in either the 3rd, sometimes the 4th for you, but let's use the 4th in the whole sign system. It's T-squaring the sun and moon. So that Cancer full moon is really tense, is activating the chart angles. So it's showing you, okay, how does my relationship make me feel accepted or rejected? And how does that connect even with Chiron in the 4th of like, maybe it's a family member. Maybe you're getting into a little bit of a moment of agitation with a family member. Family member leaves you feeling rejected, or maybe the relationship makes you feel like you're not tending to your vulnerabilities inside. The 4th house is just sometimes our inner world. So I do see this as like a very emotionally charged illumination of how accepted you feel in your close relationships. Mercury will be retrograde in the 1st. I'm not gonna lie, a lot of miscommunication is possible for you in January. And Mars is still retrograde for some of you in your sixth, some in the fifth. But if it's in the sixth, like a lot of Cap risings and Capricorns, you will have a lot of, you're rethinking how you can set boundaries in your day-to-day work. Am I working in a way that's productive for me? Am I saying yes to too many projects? I'm feeling exhausted because I'm too busy here. I'm working too hard. So that at that point, you're re-strategizing. You've got to keep rethinking, how efficient am I really in my job? Now Jupiter's back in Aries in your third or fourth. If it's in your third, then it's helping you expand and want to learn more, want to incorporate, want to learn a lot more about a subject, or get the bigger perspective on a range of subjects, maybe publish something. And eventually, if it's in your fourth, maybe you're focused on moving. Maybe some of you are focused on moving, and whether or not your relationship is comfortable enough for you to move and take that next step. Now there's an Aquarius new moon on January 21st. And that new moon is in your second house for most of you. And the new moon is the beginning of something, the initiation. You're setting intentions in your second house of money, finance, self-worth, and natural talents and values. The Saturn-Venus conjunction in the second has a distinctly financial flavor to it. So I think for many Caps, late January, you're agreeing to a new income, a new financial situation, or you're committing to what you really value. So maybe it's not money. Maybe it's a different gift that you have. Maybe you would rather commit to your musicianship or your sportsmanship. The second house is anything we're just naturally talented at. And I think with Saturn there, you've had a lot of financial insecurities with Saturn in the second for many years. You've just been worried and paranoid about not having enough. It's possible that Venus here will give you that. But, Venus-Saturn conjunctions, sometimes it's about ending something of a relationship even, or something financial. But I think for some of you, it's actually personal about relationships. Maybe you're starting a relationship or ending a relationship with somebody because you don't value the same things, right? Like that could be part of it. Now, Mercury Mars are direct again, though. So Mars direct in your sixth. You're advancing your plans in your workplace. You're more efficient. You set better boundaries. Mercury, thank God, it's direct for you because it's in your first house. So everyday communication will pick up again. You'll be a little bit more savvy. But I do want to shift to Aquarius. So Aquarius, what are you dealing with in January? You have a Cancer full moon, in your sixth house. And the Cancer full moon is always, again, it's illumination, culmination, release, emotions with Cancer swelling to the surface. And in your sixth house of work and routine, I kind of feel like maybe this is an emotional moment with coworkers, or maybe you realizing how off the track or on track you are with your regimen, your diet, your exercise, your healing processes. And I think here it's like, maybe even how comfortable do you feel like, in your job and working on what you're working on? Do you feel like you're even nurtured by those that you're working with? And the Cap new moon was in your 12th, though. So you're focused on, in that case, your spiritual side. So is your spiritual side, is your spiritual side nurturing or hindering, or is your new spiritual goal in the 12th with your new moon in Cap, is it supporting, or does it clash with what you're working on day to day? So maybe it's like you realize that your work doesn't always have a clear purpose and you'd rather have it be different. Now, Chiron will be there in the third. So for most of you, some of you in the second, but Chiron, for many of you, will be in the third, T-squaring this Cancer full moon, which honestly, when Chiron's in the third, T-squaring a full moon in Cancer, it does feel like there's just like a couple conversations for you in your everyday life that are just a little agitating. Because Chiron in the third, it's like your siblings, your neighbors, your texts, your phone calls. So I do see that there's just like a conversation here, maybe with a coworker about a project that you don't enjoy, or maybe you're having a conversation with someone about your health. Maybe someone tells you, hey, you should think about doing more cardio, and you take it the wrong way. So you are going to want to think about mind, body, soul. Like, am I invested in these things in a balanced way? And maybe I'm pushing myself too hard and I shouldn't have to feel like self-conscious and rejected. But the good thing, I think, is that other transits, Jupiter is also here in Aries. So maybe you're expanding your perspective in the third with Jupiter, or if it's in your second, maybe you're expanding your financial life and your sense of self-worth, actually, to want the job that's right for you. Now, Mars is retrograde in your fifth, maybe your fourth. If it's in your fifth, then you're rethinking, how you're talking about your creative projects. Are you investing in your creative side? If it's in your fourth, maybe you're rethinking how how you're arranging your home, or a contract that you signed that, for some home work. Like there's a couple things that could happen there. But Mercury will also be retrograde in your 12th, maybe your 11th. Most of you are in your 12th house. Mercury retrograde in the 12th, sleep may be a little difficult, but also you may be highly reflective there in the 12th about what is my connection to the divine? Do I really know all that I really need to know yet? Like, is there more to discover about my spirituality? I think that there probably is. Now let's jump to the Aquarius new moon. That's in your first. Aquarius new moon in the first, and January 21st. That is very much the charting of a new course in your self-development journey. Announcing some type of new project about, or some type of new effort that you're taking on, new identity. It's a really fresh start. It's a new beginning for the next year, really, because the Aquarius new moon happens every year, but I think the new moon in your first house is really strong. It's like you are really saying, like, this is me. Because for example, like Cancer new moon in 2021, I announced that I was doing astrology in some capacity, on social media, but just kind of to talk about it to people. And then the next Cancer new moon in this summer, I went full time as an astrologer. So and I'm a Cancer rising, sorry. I'm a Cancer rising. So those new moons I use to really start in advance, and those journeys are connected, right? So each new moon in your first house is probably connected to the previous. So for Aquarius, think about the last Aquarius new moon, which was, I don't have the date in front of me. It was probably in late January of this year. So think to where you were then, and how can you advance the journey there? Now there's a Saturn-Venus conjunction in this case in the first, which means, I think for you that has a relationship dynamic to it. So you're connecting and committing to somebody new, maybe where there is a long-term possibility, or it could really affect any facet of your life, to be honest. But I think it's probably relationship driven. It could be a financial commitment to a new financial opportunity that's long-term, or maybe you're cutting off a certain relationship that no longer serves that new you. But definitely relationships will be front and center for you in the end of January. And I think that you can meet and make the connections with the right people that you feel like committing to, either professionally, platonically, friendship, or romantically. So you're forging some type of relationship that's part of your everyday life that really helps define you. That helps define you. So now we're going to finish off with Pisces. So Pisces, let's talk about January. So there's a Cancer full moon for you, Jan 6, at 16 degrees of Cancer. That's highlighting your fifth house of creativity. And I think that, the full moon in the fifth is, to me, pretty interesting, and I think positive. The full moon in the fifth can be something where you're really pushing your emotions to a new level in front of a crowd or an audience. You're manifesting a creative project. You're just bringing your emotions out onto the stage in front of the camera, really all these great things. And it's dovetailing it's building on the Cap new moon in the 11th. So what types of groups do you associate with? You have a shared mission with these people, but now's your time to shine with the full moon in the 5th. That's you bringing your emotions to the light. And I know that a lot of Pisces risings, and Pisces generally, you're expressive, you're creative. So create. And it is T-squaring Chiron in the 2nd or the 1st, maybe. So let's go back a degree there to get Chiron closer to the 2nd. So, yeah, so for many of you, Chiron will be in the 2nd, though. So maybe it's almost like 2nd house has a connection with the 5th, right? As the 2nd house is your natural talents, the 5th house is the expression of those natural talents. So Chiron in the 2nd, it's maybe you're overcoming a chip on the shoulder and you have a higher sense of self-worth. You're healing that. And now you have the confidence to project yourself. But for others, maybe you actually are a little worried about being on stage or being in front of people. And it reminds you of how much more you have to build up. You still have to build up that self-confidence. So this is a litmus test in self-confidence, really. But overall, it's not a bad thing. Now, Jupiter will be in Aries, either in your 1st or your 2nd, to help you mitigate this a little bit. Just Jupiter in the 2nd, theoretically, generally will help you inflate and expand your self-confidence and self-worth. So, and even financial opportunities. So Jupiter will be in Aries for 5 months. So, I mean, you're going to have that for a while, but just on that full moon, you are Jan 6, like really, really feeling like you can or you can't bring your emotions into the light. So I would vote express yourself creatively. Mercury will be retrograde in the 11th. So everyday, so like group interactions, social media communication, organizational commitments, communities. There can be some mishaps there. So really be careful what you say on social media or in group settings. You know, let's go with the fact that also Mars is retrograde primarily in your 4th house, maybe your 3rd. But for many of you, Mars is retrograde in your 4th. So you're realizing how you've overextended yourself in your home life. Maybe your home life is too frenetic. You're doing too many chores, you're just stretching yourself too thin somehow in your home with your family. So you have to set better boundaries there. And you're still realizing and working through that. So now we have the Aquarius new moon, January 21st at 1 degree of Aquarius. That's in your 12th. And Saturn and Venus are conjunct there in your 12th. Now, this is one of the difficult placements for the Saturn-Venus conjunction, because in the 12th, we're talking about release, talking about surrender. Now, for some of you, this may be a relationship with the divine, literally, but I think for a lot of you, it is about letting go of a certain relationship or connection to an authority figure that you realize you can't place your faith in anymore. And you're letting that go. So maybe you're finalizing the divorce. Maybe you're saying goodbye to somebody, or maybe, you know, maybe you meet somebody. Yes, you could initiate a relationship with somebody who is more, you have a spiritual connection with, who almost feels like a soulmate. So again, I don't want to say it's all bad, but Saturn in the 12th is usually tough because it's like you're clearing foundations. So with Venus there, it's like maybe you're clearing out a relationship, but maybe you're starting one that's more spiritually purpose driven. And at this point, Mars is direct in your 4th. So you could be, you know, moving ahead and your home life is getting smoother because you've like maybe hired help, or you've decided not to work on that project anymore in the home because it flusters you, or not get distracted by these things. And then Mercury will be direct again by that point. So it'll be easier for you to communicate within those group settings and whatnot. So let's go to the conclusion here. So what's happening in January overall? Essentially, we do have an emotional moment in early January with the Cancer full moon in the Aries I described. And with that T-square to Chiron, everyone's going to have to think about where am I in my healing journey? How am I nurturing myself? And how am I relying too much on other people to nurture me, right? So how can I nurture myself there? And then towards the end of the month, you're thinking about what relationships can stand the test of time and which ones do I need to end, and which ones are maybe aligned with my values long-term. So I think there's a fight over values in January, late January, for a lot of people. There's a fight over like, is this really the person or the people I want to associate with? But for some, it could just be a financial agreement. So again, I want to thank you for attending and watching this forecast. If you want to subscribe, I would definitely recommend you subscribe to my YouTube. So do that. If you want a reading from me, I think everyone should get a reading from me at least once in their lives. I talk about you and only you for an hour. Click the link below. If you want to attend my astrology retreat in Croatia, also check the link down below. That's in the first week of September, which I think is prime time for being on the Mediterranean. So definitely, and reach out with questions if you're considering that trip. And also, if you want to see all into 2023, the whole thing, the whole 9 yards, then also download that through my website and the link below. So thank you so much. Take care.